Hello, dear friend. Welcome back to another episode of the Reflective Parenting Podcast. My name is Cindy Hovington and I'm your host. I am a mom of three from Montreal, Canada, and I have a Ph.D. in neuroscience. And my goal through Curious Neuron is to share some science with you that'll make life a little bit easier. Most importantly, my focus is on you, the parent. So, not parenting, but you, the parent, in helping you feel confident and helping you stop doubting what you're doing as a parent. I haven't covered the topic we are going to talk about today in a very long time. Talking about tantrums was something I did in the original series or part of the Curious Neuron podcast, which is what this was called before. And I just moved away from that towards parents. And I just thought that we needed to come back to this. And it was a really good time to do this because of my guest and the book that she put out. But before we talk about that, I just want to make sure that I take a moment to thank you, the listener. We have been seeing the numbers go up. And so I'm assuming that you are sharing these episodes with friends and family members. I have some people that reached out and said that they are sharing it on Facebook groups. Please don't stop doing that. It means so much to me. It is so important. Whether you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or watching this on YouTube, it is so important to share this, to subscribe. So make sure that the first thing you do is subscribe to this podcast wherever you want to listen to your podcast, and make sure that you share this, especially if you have a friend that has or a family member that has a toddler. This episode is for them, and show them that you care by sending them this episode. And there are also lots of blog posts on curiousneuron.com. What I try to do is summarize some really important research studies, and I've put out some work specifically around some toddlers and emotions and development and brain development in kids. If you just go to curiousneuron.com, there's a freebie, by the way, on that homepage for you. And if you scroll down, you'll see all of the recent blog posts that I've been writing and preparing. And so have a look there, and it'll lead you to other podcast episodes that you might have not heard yet. And so I encourage you to head to curiousneuron.com. Or you can also visit us on Facebook, Curious Neuron, the Reflective Parenting Podcast. There's a private Facebook page, and you can follow us on Instagram at curious_neuron. I'd also like to thank the Tannenbaum Open Science Institute for supporting the Curious Neuron, the Reflective Parenting Podcast, and the McConnell Foundation. Both of these organizations believe in the importance of sharing science, and that is what I also believe in. And so I am glad that I get to share the science with you, all of you, and that I get to meet with you. If you haven't done so and you want to meet and just chat and share your life with me and some of the struggles that you're having, my Calendly link is always in the show notes. And so I do that on purpose because I want to get to know you. I met two people last week they were really interesting people and parents. And I get to know where you're from, where you're listening from, what sort of struggles you're going through. And that gives me content. I need this. I need to know what you're going through. And so I want to hear from you. So click that link in the show notes. And for those of you that are joining the Reflective Parenting Podcast, I could not be more excited to meet you. Whenever I see new faces on Tuesdays at 12 p.m. or 8 p.m., I get really excited. And most people are coming from the podcast, and they're saying that they've been listening to the podcast for a year or two, and they keep hearing me talk about the Reflective Parenting Club. And now they want to finally take the leap, make the leap, and do something for themselves. Their kids are usually a little bit older, although we have parents with toddlers and 18-month-olds in our club. They want to finally start working on regulating their own emotions because they've seen that up until now, it hasn't made a change in their child by learning more parenting advice, and that they're overwhelmed by all the parenting advice. Now that they've actually made a difference, and there's a mom who I absolutely adore, is a new parent, shared the most amazing win that we were learning about interoception, and she realized that her body was warming up in a car ride with her kids, and it was so beautiful to hear her journey and what she did to regulate herself, which also regulated her kids. And so that is what the Reflective Parent Club is all about. I hope to see some of you next week on our weekly call. But for now, let's talk about tantrum, shall we? Okay, so this is somebody that I've been following for many years. I would say even before the pandemic hit. But that we started connecting around the time of the pandemic because we were some of the platforms that were growing. She grew a lot more than mine. She's almost at 1 million followers, and the account is Transforming Toddlerhood. I'm going to put it in the show notes, of course, as well as her book is called Transforming Toddlerhood, Your Essential Guide for Ages 1 to 5. And I mean, if you want practical advice that's broken down into these bite-sized chapters that you just refer to when you need it, this is the book that you need. I'm absolutely in love with this book, and I just wanted to share. I have my finger on a specific page. Obviously, there's, if your child is or your toddler is refusing to eat, is a picky eater, you're not parenting in the same way that your partner is. If you're not sure what your toddler's emotions are communicating to you, if you are struggling with a child who is biting, who is hitting, if there's a new baby in the house, all of these things are covered in her book. But most importantly, she does it in a way that is, to me, accurate to the research that I see. And she's written it in a way that is so simple. So, for example, here I'm on page 100, and she talks about toddler behavior decoder, which I absolutely love. So she says, understanding your toddler's behavior starts with recognizing that what you see on the surface isn't the whole story. It's their way of communicating big feelings and unmet needs in the only ways they know how. And so she has it broken down into toddler appears, how the toddler appears, and what and the toddler actually is, what the toddler actually is. And so, for example, if your toddler appears to be defiant, what they're actually doing is practicing autonomy. When your toddler is being manipulative, what they're actually doing is being strategic in meeting a need or desire. When your child or your toddler is needy, they're looking for connection. When they're being difficult, they're having a hard time. And I think this is exactly what we need as parents, where it's something that is just so simple to apply. And the sort of not a dictionary, but almost like an encyclopedia that we just go back to understand our toddler, it just makes it easy. We don't have to consume and educate ourselves and become masters at toddlerhood. But if we start to understand little bits and pieces, certain parts of that will be very easy. I want to add a little bit of the neuroscience to the conversation you're going to hear in a few seconds. My conversation with Devon, I want to add to this that we spoke about the importance of you regulating first, but I don't know if we went into enough detail when it comes to understanding the importance of co-regulation. Your child's nervous system is developing in terms of what is happening in their environment. And their stress response is going to be more reactive if their environment is causing more stress and doesn't feel as safe for whatever reasons. It could be because of something that's happening between you and your partner. It could be because of something else in the environment. But all of this is to say, that's going to come out as behavior. And we have to understand how a nervous system develops and their stress response develops, because we see it as bad behavior versus asking, what happened or what might have happened in my child's environment that might have led to a very reactive nervous system, stress system, sorry. And so I just truly want you to understand that. You can click the link in the show notes. I'm going to put some articles from our website so that you can get a bit more of the science behind that. But it truly is important for us to understand our child because, or especially our toddler, they are not doing this to us. And so many times I will hear a parent feel like their child is trying to be defiant on purpose. And that is not the truth. It is far from the truth. I know that many of us were raised this way, and that our parents might still see it this way with their grandchildren and might be telling us like, hey, don't let your 2-year-old talk to you like that. But it is not what's going on. They need consistency and they need to feel safe and they need us to be regulated. And that's where the hard part is. And so if you are a parent that has a toddler and you are struggling to show up regulated, it doesn't have to be calm, but regulated is in a way that you are being flexible to what's happening in the environment. You are able to cope with stress and learn how to recharge yourself in the moments that you need that. That is an emotionally intelligent parent. And if you struggle with that, then come join me inside the Reflective Parent Club, or very soon. I'm late. I know I told you this maybe 2 weeks ago now. I'm trying really hard to put that course out. We have a course inside the club. You can actually get both for the same price right now, but I'm going to be pulling it out shortly at some point. I'm almost done. But that course will help you learn to build your self-awareness. But you can do that even more efficiently when you meet with me every single week, because I walk you through different situations in your life and you get to share your wins and your challenges every single week. And so that's what the Reflective Parent Club is. But the course itself will be out very shortly. All right, I don't want to let you wait any longer. Please enjoy my conversation with Devon. Welcome back, everyone. And as promised, I'm here with Devon Kuntzman. Welcome to the Reflective Parenting Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat today.
I was just saying while we were chatting that we've kind of been in our world of online parenting for quite a few years now, and it took a while for us to get together. But I'm really excited that we're doing it at the launch of your new books, and congratulations on that.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm so excited for this book to be out there and really start supporting parents.
Right. And so transforming toddlerhood has been your handle and what you do online and helping us understand tantrums and behavior and supporting parents. We're going to talk about that today. My goal really with this conversation with you is to that parents leave this conversation feeling excited and empowered for the next can is if it's possible, excited for the next tantrum, feeling confident that okay, I got this. I understand this. I know what to do and I trust myself, in this moment. The first thing I always am curious about is what led, well, you've always covered this topic, but what led to the idea of like, now's the right time to put this book out and this is what it has to be about?
Yes. Okay. So the reason that this book is out now is because I really wanted to write a book that was going to make a difference for parents because there's so many parenting books out there, but I really wanted to write a book that filled a gap. And so
Mm.
it took me a while to really evaluate like what I thought would move the needle the most for parents and what I realized, especially as a toddler mom myself, I'm exhausted. I have a lot going on. And when I try to read a book, I mean, sometimes I get a few pages, I'm rereading paragraphs, and like reading a 20-page chapter can feel really daunting at
Mhm.
times. And then at the end, I'm like, wait, what are my takeaways? So I created a comprehensive, so it's all in one. It's like the what to expect for toddlerhood, but at the same time, it's 45 short, digestible chapters
Mm.
covering every possible challenge you might face in toddlerhood. So you can just flip to the chapter you need when you need it, whether it's a tantrum, a power struggle, you feel like you're going to yell, you're trying to set a limit and it's not going well, or maybe you're experiencing parental preference in your home, or your
Mhm.
toddler's throwing food at meals. I literally talk about everything in this book because I really want to be a quick reference guide for parents. And that's what I feel like we're missing in this age group. So it finally was the time to bring this to life.
I love that. And it is time for us to get that. And when it's in these bite-sized chapters, it's so easy to come back to it when we need it. And so I love that you did that. I just wrote down parental preference because I need to make sure that we come back to that
Oh,
because I've
perfect.
heard so much about this. It's so hard. Okay, let's get started. I think with just understanding toddlers and their behavior. I was going through some of your posts and there are two parts to this. So I love that you support the parent in that moment because what I hear from parents sometimes is when their child is acting out or having big tantrums or big emotions, they often feel, my child just hit me. Oh my gosh, I'm failing. What did I do wrong? How did we get here? Or maybe a toddler has a tantrum in public and you're embarrassed and you're like, oh my gosh, everybody's looking at me. I've messed everything up. How did I get here? And
Mhm.
so I love that you have a post, which is a parenthood reminder. Your toddler's behavior is not your fault. Part of that is just such important advice for parents and it's almost like we have to repeat it to ourselves in our mind. So we're going to get to that I think at the end of our conversation and help supporting parents, but first, another one you have is children ages 1 to 5 are meant to explore their surroundings, test boundaries, and express themselves in the ways they know how, only they know how, right? So let's start with that because once we understand our child, maybe we won't see it as misbehavior or they're doing this to me or they're trying to push my buttons because it feels like that sometimes. So why are they having these big tantrums?
Yes, this is why I dedicate a whole section of my book called The Toddler Explained, where we go through the brain development, the sensory system, and exactly how to decode your toddler's behavior. Because the biggest thing is that because our toddlers are becoming so physically independent and then they're starting to learn words, we start to see them as maybe more grown up than they actually are.
Yeah,
Right. Like,
right.
and because toddlers have a lot of physical capabilities, we kind of think that they're emotional control should be the same. And
Yeah.
it's not. And so when we think about it, babies, the way that they communicate to us is through crying, mostly
Mhm.
when they need something, right? And then you have toddlers, like young toddlers, ages 1 to 2. they're crying, but now they have so much more control over their bodies. They're starting to use their bodies to communicate, so they're using hitting, kicking, biting, flailing around, having tantrums, things like this. And
Mm.
so then older toddlers, they add in using their words. You might hear them say, "You're a mean mommy," or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. It's really easy to think there's something wrong with your toddler, or there's something wrong with you as the parent or caregiver. I've been there. It's really easy to go to that place, but really, all behavior is communication. Toddlers use their behavior to communicate their feelings, their wants, their needs, their desires. It's communicating their level of brain development. It's
Mm.
communicating their basic needs, like if they're tired, hungry, need for
Right.
connection. It's communicating their sensory needs,
Mm.
if they're overstimulated, understimulated. And it is also communicating their developmental needs, which in toddlerhood are things like the need to experiment, explore, the need to have a sense of control, to feel capable, to have a role in the family, to exert their will. These are all developmental needs that your toddler is trying to fulfill or get met through their behavior.
I love that list that you just created. The sensory needs, the even I'm thinking of like kids who want to put on their sock. They're going to struggle for 10 minutes, but let them put that sock on. But what's so hard is sometimes you're getting ready to go to work and you're like, "No, I need to put that sock on for you." And so it becomes this power struggle. How do we navigate that as parents? So, I guess first, I think parents really struggle with knowing the reason behind or what it's communicating. I think that's a skill that we have to develop almost in terms of becoming like the detective around like what's going on. But then in those moments saying like I know they're communicating this to me, sometimes it's not possible. So how do we move forward with that?
Yes. Okay. So first I'll answer the first part of this
Mm.
question, which is yes, we have to be the detective. And so we want to get curious. We want to get curious. And what's so great about curiosity is not only will it help us understand what's happening with our toddlers more when we get curious about all the things that could be causing the behavior at the root instead of just focusing on making the behavior on the surface
Mm.
stop. But it also is going to help us calm down and be more compassionate
Right.
because we realize our toddler is not being bad or doing it to us on purpose. They're actually trying to get a need met, or they don't have the brain development or life skills or things like that. So that's helpful there. But then also, when we start to get curious and connect with our children in that process, which like getting curious might just be like, say, you could be as simple as saying something like, um, I know
Mm.
you really want to go to the park right now and we can't. You really wanted to go. That's right there. That's a great way to connect. Or it might be, you might say something like, I wonder if you're feeling frustrated. Or you
Mm.
might say, that's so frustrating, we can't go.
Mhm.
Using these types of connection pieces and getting curious in the process, if you don't know what's happening, is going to create, um, it's going to allow your child to feel seen and heard. And
Mm.
then the more they feel seen and heard, the more influence you're going to have, and then the more cooperation that's going to be created. So that's why curiosity is so important. Even if you don't know the actual root, just knowing there is a root and your toddler is not being
True.
just, like difficult on purpose, that
Mm.
already is helpful.
I love, and it's so true. I mean, in that moment, and we're going to talk about the parent later, but in that
Mhm.
moment, especially when you're dysregulated or you're like tapped out or stressed, it's so hard to show up with empathy. But the more you see it as communication, I do think that it helps you with that compassion piece of like, oof, you haven't eaten yet. It's almost dinner time. You are hungry, and I get hangry too when I'm hungry. And so I
Oh, I
get you,
do.
kid. Like it's I see you. There's something about that. It's soothing, and even if they don't understand all the words that we're saying, I've told parents this a few times, even though they're not going to understand every single thing, they're understanding the body language. They're understanding that nonverbal communication. That plays
Mhm.
a role, right? Also in,
Oh,
in supporting them.
absolutely.
Yeah.
The nonverbal communication is so important. And toddlers develop the receptive language before expressive language. So
Mm-hmm.
toddlers can understand so much more than we think they can. And so why they might they might not understand every single word you're saying, but they're going to understand the general idea of what
Right.
you're saying a lot of times, especially starting from like 15, 16 months onward. But here's the thing. When you get stuck in these moments where you're like, okay, I see my toddler's having a hard time, but we've got to leave, say it's like time to go and they don't want to put on their socks or shoes or, whatever it is. I think like the first thing we need to realize is it is okay to set limits and follow through. It
Mm-hmm.
is not our job to keep our children happy. And a lot of
Thank
parents
you.
really get kind of like freaked out a little bit when they set a limit and their toddler has a big reaction. And then they think either they're doing something wrong or there's something wrong with their kid, even if like their kid's just being bad or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is it's not our job to keep our children happy. You can't control another person's feelings and emotions. You can influence it in a positive or negative way, but you can't control it. So then if that's not the goal, what is the goal? The goal is to support your child so they feel emotionally supported, to give them limits that help them feel safe and secure, and
Mm-hmm.
to teach them the skills that they need to be successful in life. And all of those three things together is called the recipe for effective discipline, or also what I like to call developmentally smart discipline, which I go through in depth each one of those in the book. But that's how we want to start thinking about and approaching discipline. So if you set a limit, that's a totally typical reaction for your toddler to be upset and to cry and feel disappointed. That's part of the process of them accepting the limit. And you can't force them to accept the limit. You got to let them accept it on their own.
And that's where they're also going to learn how to regulate emotions that come with the
Yes.
disappointment, which is so
Yes.
important. That's what we focus on here at Curious Neuron. And I tell parents, like, when you set that limit and they're disappointed, that's great. Because then you can show them, like, okay, I see that you're disappointed. It doesn't feel good to be disappointed, but I still can't go to the park. Let me help you, right? Let me co-regulate with you. And you're not using those words, but that's what you're going to do, which in the end is going to help that child build those emotion regulation skills.
Exactly, which, brings up a really great point is that coming back to this idea of tantrums, or when your child's
Mm.
really upset, whether they're just having a tantrum because you set a limit or whatever, that distracting your child from their emotions by just
Yeah.
handing them a screen or
Yeah.
handing them, like a box of whatever from the grocery store aisle or a candy
Mm-hmm.
bar from the checkout, like it in the short term, yes, that's going to end the tantrum and the crying, but at what expense here? Because
Right.
as you said, when a child falls to pieces and comes back to their emotional equilibrium, that's part of the life skills that they need for emotional regulation and to be able to handle challenges. That's how we help kids build resilience. So,
Yeah.
yes, tantrums are hard to get through as a
Mm-hmm.
parent. I would be happy if I never heard my child cry again, quite frankly. Like, it's hard to
Yeah.
hear, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I can
Mm-hmm.
admit that. I'd rather not hear it.
Right.
And we have to put our own like ego aside here in this
Mm-hmm.
moment. I'm not saying put our needs aside because we need to take care
Right.
of our needs, but at the same time, part of our child's needs is to be able to fall to pieces, come
Yep.
back to their emotional equilibrium with a supportive parent alongside them.
Who feels confident, right? Because that's
Mm-hmm.
something that can be really
Yes.
hard when you talk about those limits and boundaries. I've heard from parents who really struggle to hold those firmly because it's
Mm-hmm.
like, no, you can't go to the park. Child cries, child's upset, you feel bad. They're not asking for something that's like the end of the world. And so why
Mm-hmm.
not give in? And then something else happens. They ask for an extra cookie and you're like, well,
Right.
it's not the end of the world. Might as well. I said no. Now I'm going to say yes. Is that something that can be really confusing to a toddler?
10,000%. And this is also why you might see an increase in tantrums and how tantrums can accidentally be reinforced. And good parents do this every day.
Mm-hmm.
I've done it before and it's tempting to do it, right?
Yeah.
Because again, it's hard to hear your child cry for so many reasons. But what's so important to know here is that, so I have two things to say. The first is, I think the number one rule, if I was going to give a rule, I don't really like the word rules, but I'm just going to throw it out there. Like the number one tenet to
Mm-hmm.
remember when setting a limit is only set the limits you're willing to follow through on. So if you're not willing to
Right.
follow through on a limit that you're about to set, think about like if your kid just explodes, has a hard time accepting the limit, and you're going to want to backpedal, don't set that limit. That actually means
Yeah.
that it's not, you might be setting a limit out of convenience, but then as soon as it becomes inconvenient, you want to reverse. So
Mhm.
don't set limits out of convenience, only set the limits you want to follow through on. So that's my first piece
I
of
like that.
advice. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
so, I think that's so important. And the second piece of advice is we're all human beings. No one's going to be a perfect parent.
Yeah.
So consistency is key here, but consistency does not equal perfection. Consistency is more often than not, it's predictable you're going to respond in a specific way. There's always going to be a time where we give in on a limit.
Mhm.
Like there is not one toddler parent on the planet that has like never given in. It's just we're human beings. It's going to happen at some point. But it needs to be predictable. You're going to respond in a certain way. So if it's predictable, you're going to give in, you're going to have more tantrums. If it's predictable, you're going to follow through, but you give in like one time because everyone's just at their breaking point. That's not going to be a big deal because it's predictable, but every child's different. So you need to know what your child's threshold for predictability is.
That is okay. I just realized something as you were saying all this. So I've always noticed the difference. It's now not now, but when my kids were younger, with my husband and myself. And now I think it's because I didn't hold through or follow through with certain boundaries. He would say it once and they would follow every single time. He would say it nicely and I would say it nicely too. But I would have to repeat myself 5 times and then get really frustrated and say, I asked you guys, why does anybody hear me? Hello, anybody? And so I realized that there would be an immediate like consequence of the boundary not being followed with him versus me. It was the consequences I'm repeating it 5 times. It's because I'm assuming it's because of this.
Right. I
Yeah,
mean, this
I
is the
see it now.
thing. It's yes, and but the thing is that it's kids know
Who?
who to ask for
Yeah,
what.
they
Okay.
do.
Even at 2 years old, they know.
Mm.
At 3 years old, then they're going to start saying, wait, as my son, no, wait, I'm going to go ask Papa.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm going to go ask, I'm talking to Mama right now,
Oh my gosh,
Papa.
I've been there. Yes.
They
Oh yeah.
know.
Yeah. We have to get into the parental preference soon. I have one more question around that. I think I still have actually a few questions, but one thing that parents will ask me is like, what is the right script? Right? What is the right thing? And you mentioned perfectionism, right? And not getting it perfect. And so I'm wondering if the response I give is okay or if we need to see it differently. There will not be a right script every time. It will not sound the same every time, is what I'm assuming. Is this am I on the right track?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, scripts are a jumping off point, right? Because scripts are, in some ways, when we're learning to parent in a developmentally smart way, it is somehow learning a new language, right? We are creating new habits, new neural pathways and
Mm-hmm.
connections, new ways of speaking, new ways of doing. And we're really fighting against our stress response and
Sure.
our ingrained automatic reactions,
Right.
which is usually just kind of regurgitating what we heard growing up because it's automatic. So, knowing all of that, scripts can be supportive in helping learn that new language. But also, it's important to know that scripts are a jumping off point, not
I
a
like that.
right way, and that they should always be modified to fit your unique family, your unique situation. And again, not to be looked at as the only right way. Or if you say the script and then quote unquote, it doesn't work, because also a script is a snapshot. So maybe the script isn't continued to, you set the limit, but then the script didn't include the follow through or the teaching
Right.
skills piece. It only had like the connection and the limit piece. So we just have to like understand how scripts can be supportive, because I include lots of scripts in my book, lots of toddler tips, scripts, behavior red flags, but we also have to understand the limitations of scripts as well.
I get that. And every child is different. They might respond well to a certain script or not. And you might feel more at ease with one versus another. So I like that you said jumping point, the that jumping off point, because I see that makes more sense to me. And
Yes.
I'm wondering if you can provide a parent some sort of structure or framework, right? So maybe they're going to be in the next situation and their child is having a tantrum, or maybe they're not being, the word I hear also, parents want their kids to be compliant. I think sometimes with toddlers, we have unrealistic expectations of what they should be able to do and not, which we could get into as well. But is there a certain framework that can at least guide us the next time this happens?
So yes, there definitely is a structure or framework for responding that can be really supportive. And when it comes to tantrums specifically, though, tantrums oftentimes less is more. So when it comes to tantrums, I really just recommend, first of all, creating safety, which is honestly the prerequisite to just about any script out there, which is creating physical safety. So your toddler is physically safe and you're physically safe. So if your toddler is like kicking you, you move back, or if your toddler might fall off the couch because they're having a tantrum, you put them on the ground, whatever it might be. And then you can tell yourself this is not an emergency and start creating that emotional safety, helping yourself get grounded. Because
Right.
in a tantrum, the best thing that you can do is create the safety, continue following through on the limit that might have triggered the tantrum, and grounding yourself, because at this point, you need your child to have what my good friend Patty Whipfler calls an emotional poop. You got to let them have the emotional poop.
Yeah.
And then then they're going to come back to their equilibrium. And so it's really about you staying calm and grounded. So then your toddler can borrow your calm as they work through kind of like the bell curve of a tantrum.
Right.
That being said, if you want like a general structure and framework for a script, that's where we come back to the recipe for effective discipline. Most of my scripts are structured from that recipe. The creating connection, which I outline 5 different ways in my book that you can create emotional connection, setting the limit, and then teaching skills. And so all of my scripts are structured loosely around the recipe for effective discipline, because I always say that we want to have all the ingredients to have, you wouldn't leave out one ingredient if you're baking a cupcake, right? And so it's kind of the same thing here, is that you don't want to leave out any of the ingredients because each ingredient serves a purpose.
So does that recipe and framework apply whether my child is just really angry, or let's say they're crying because they're having a tantrum, versus they're angry and they're trying to hit me, versus they're biting their sibling? Would that same recipe apply?
We're always going to focus on creating safety first. So if it's like a behavior where there's like a safety threat, right? Like hitting, biting, kicking, pushing, throwing a toy at a sibling's head, whatever it might be in the moment because someone's frustrated. We always want to work on creating that physical safety first. And if there's 2 kids involved, it might look like separating them. If it's you and your child, it might look like taking a step back, putting a cushion in between the 2 of you, giving your child something else they can bite. My son, actually, he's 3 years and 2 months. And last night, he was really upset. He was out of sorts. Now I know he was getting sick because he woke up with a,
Right.
runny nose and
Yeah.
sneezing and coughing, all the things. But so I know I'm going down next, but anyways, just trying to stay positive over here. But so he was having a really hard time and he really wanted to hit me. And I just said to him, I won't let you hit me. And I kind of grabbed him kind of from under the armpits, kept him at arm's length from me. I never recommend holding a child's hands because that can just create even more pushback from them. So I kept him at arm's length. And then I was redirecting. I said, I know you're so frustrated. You want to hit. You can hit this pillow. We were in his bed. And so he hit the pillow a couple of times. He's like, I don't want to hit this. I need to hit something. I need to hit something hard.
Yeah.
He's
very
crying.
specific on his needs.
I know, he's very
He knows
specific.
what he wants.
Right. But at the same time, it was really great because I was like, oh, he is looking for a physical outlet, as most toddlers are looking for a physical way to express their feelings and emotions, because the part of the brain that's responsible for emotional regulation isn't really as developed at this point. So it's going to be a lot harder for them to use more intangible coping skills, right? So they really need that physical component. And so anyways, it was very interesting because, I, at that moment, focused on, creating safety and separating him from me. And I kept saying, I won't let you hit me. I know you're upset, and just, kept them at arm's length. So anyways,
That's a
if
good
it's a
example.
behavior that's like
Yeah.
unsafe, we always have to start with the physical safety and then usually the emotional safety afterwards, because we're probably feeling a little bit triggered,
Hmm.
and then kind of go into the recipe for effective discipline.
I love that. And so I'm assuming the same would apply if a child is biting. It's the
Mhm.
same, creating the safety.
Yeah, and we actually have saved some of the silicone things that like maybe he used for teething. I still have those
That's
in
so
like a
smart.
little basket in our
Yeah.
living room, and once in a while there's these ones from Easy Peasy that are like really like harder, and they're used for like oral motor development. Anyways, I love them because they're a little bit harder, and sometimes like he wants to bite that, but he can't like bite through it, and that is a great way for him to get that frustration out. And
Mm.
so oftentimes I say with toddlers, sometimes we need to give them an appropriate physical outlet for an unsafe behavior or for big feelings until they can learn more of those soft skills, those coping skills. But we don't want to practice those in the heat of the moment. We want to teach skills when the child is
Ah, right.
calm. After the heat of the moment, practice them in the calm moments, teach them in the calm moments. So then your child will be able to start recalling them in the tough moments.
That is so important for us to focus on just an extra minute at least, because I think that that's a huge, not a misunderstanding, but like a missed piece of education, I think, for parents, right? Like we do it in the moment. Okay, take deep breaths,
Mhm.
right? Like we try to teach them all those skills, but they're not there to listen. I always like to use the example of if we're in an argument with our partner and they're like, hey, take deep breaths. It will not go well. Like for me anyways,
Right. I mean, I don't want to be
yeah.
told that. Like, if
Oh,
someone tells me to calm down, I'm like,
yeah. Do you want to see me not calm? So
I'm like, you can't control my feelings and
yeah,
emotions.
right. So imagine the toddler that can communicate that, right? So in that moment, no, so in between the tantrums, that's where all the learning happens. How do you do it? Is it play based? Because I'm thinking of your 3-year-old versus maybe an 18-month-old that won't understand that sort of play yet, or that sort of language yet. Sorry. So are we introducing this through play? Like, how do we show them to bite something else or hit something else?
Yes. So, of course, play is the language of childhood, of toddlerhood. So, anything that we can bring to a child through play is really great. However, that can feel like a heavier lift for parents because it kind of feels like you need to know more about what you're doing or how you would approach it. I don't know. It kind of feels like a heavier lift. So,
Yeah.
what I say for parents is the best way to teach these skills, the very first way to start teaching, there's two things you can do. Buy books. I have a great list of books in the book resources page. There's a QR code in the book where you can go to the book resources page with books that are for social emotional learning.
Hmm.
Or in my Amazon store, there's just so many amazing books out there on all of these different topics. So parents don't have to know exactly what to say or do. You can explore these topics through books and then
I like
get
that.
curious, ask questions. The second way that is very low lift is just modeling it yourself. So whenever you are having a human being moment and you're feeling triggered and you feel like you're on the verge of yelling or pulling your hair out, whatever it might be, modeling some coping skills. And there are skills that are easier for kids to learn, like inhale, like, and then
Hmm.
exhale. So often adding a visual to like a breathing exercise or something like this, blowing bubbles, practicing pretending to blow out a candle. I
Hmm.
have some of these in my book. These are great skills that are a little bit easier for toddlers to learn. But whether you model those or just, opening a bottle of essential oil and taking a deep
Hmm.
breath, or just kind of giving yourself a big hug and a squeeze, or tuning into your five senses, breathing, whatever it might be, every time you model that for your toddler, especially in real time where you really think you're about to explode, this human moment, this vulnerable moment of you not being a perfect parent is not only helping rewire your brain, but you're teaching your child the skills that they need. You're showing them it's okay to be human, and I can learn the skills I need to be
Yeah.
successful here.
That is so important. And I have 3 kids. They're 6, 8, and 10 now.
Mm,
But that's what helped my kids so much. They
yes.
started, I realized that part of the way that I was parented was like not talking about your emotions. And so
Mm.
it had, even if I knew the importance of that, I had to undo that pattern. And so the more I started telling my kids, whoo, I'm feeling overwhelmed right now, or like, okay, I'm feeling ignored, I'm getting a little frustrated, I'm just going to go take a deep breath, or I'm just going to step away to the side, or even hugging a stuffed animal that they had, right? That sort of self hug, those concepts really supported them and they started mimicking me in those moments. It does work. I
Mm-hmm.
hope that parents really understand this part and start applying it today, because it's something that will make a huge difference in their home in terms of the emotional language that they speak together as a family. I
Yeah.
absolutely love that.
Absolutely. And one thing I want to say is a lot of times parents come to me when I talk about these types of things and they say, well, but I have a 15-month-old and they can't, like, are they really understanding me? Can they understand this? And that comes back to this idea we talked about earlier about the expressive language versus the
Right.
receptive language. They can understand earlier than we think, but if you're practicing when your child is 12 months, 15 months, 18 months
Hmm.
old, practicing these conversations, this language, then you're building the habit early. And so it's going to be easier for you. And your child's been listening to it. So even if they don't understand you, they're internalizing this cadence, this way of talking, and it's going to make a huge difference. And guess what? If you
Mm.
have a 5-year-old and you're listening, or a 7-year-old, it's never too late to start too. I want
Right.
to say that.
Yeah. It's so true.
Even a
Okay.
10-year-old, there's no age
It's
limit. It's
true.
never too late.
I love that you said that. It's so true. Okay. I want to flip this to behaviors that our child do, or things that they do, sorry, that are not necessarily um, bad behaviors, but triggering to us, like
Sure.
a parent that they prefer. It is so triggering to so many parents. And I hear this so much from moms specifically, that are part of this community, that they really struggle when you've had a child, a baby, a toddler, and now they're maybe 2.5, 3. Maybe you have a second child, maybe they're the only child, but all of a sudden, when you feel you've given everything to this child, they're like, I don't want you anymore. I want dad, or the other parent, right? Like, it's like, how can you do this to me? Do you know what I did for you?
Right. I
And
know.
so it just triggers us in a way that we didn't expect, right? What advice do you have to a parent who's maybe struggling a little bit and feeling like they're doing this to me? Like, why do they hate me?
Mm, yeah, I can just say really empathize with parents that are going through this because I've experienced a lot of it myself.
Mm,
And it took me a very long time to be able to have my son. And being the non preferred parent for months at a time
mm,
was really hard. Like, I never could, like, got to put him to bed or things
right.
like that. And, like, okay, I say got to because we made the choice to let our son, like, dictate
Hmm.
that who put him to bed, mostly because my son had a lot of other challenges and issues. And that was just like, a something that we didn't want to, like,
Sure.
go through and, like, setting a limit there because we didn't
Hmm.
want to have to follow through on that limit.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, even when he got hurt, he wanted his dad for a long time. So I just want to say I've been there and it's very personal to me. And I cover both this topic and how to introduce your toddler to a new baby. Both, I have chapters for both
Right.
of those in my
I love
book.
that.
But what I will say is that the first thing is no one's bad or wrong here.
Right.
The preferred parent is not more loved than the non preferred parent. Toddlerhood is all about becoming your own individual for the
Mm,
very first time. And what happens when we're trying to become an individual is we're going to have preferences for the first time. So toddlers are like preference happy, right? Because it's how they feed that need to become independent, exert their will, and that's how they become their own individuals. So us parents get caught up in
mhm,
those preferences. So that's really what's happening there. It's not personal, even though the way your toddler is saying it might feel personal. But I think the thing to know is that, as long as you're not reinforcing the parental preference, it will go away. It could take time, but oftentimes it will flip flop when you least expect it. The non preferred parent will all of a sudden be the preferred parent, and the
mhm.
preferred parent is going to be like, see you later. Right. And so it's really amazing how that can happen. So I just want to say that no one's doing anything bad or wrong when this happens. It's just like biological that kids are going to exert their will through preferences.
And maybe that's what we need to say to ourselves, right? When the child doesn't want us to put them to bed or doesn't want us to take care of them when they're hurt. It is hurtful. We don't have to make that go away, but at least say in our mind, like, this is part of their development. They are building different attachments with us and they need to have a preference right now. It's part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not easy. I get it in the
No, it's
moment.
not easy.
I had that too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I love what you're saying here because absolutely, you can honor your feelings and emotions
Mm-hmm.
as the preferred parent. First of all,
Mm.
the preferred parent, it's not like it's all rainbows and butterflies. Like sometimes you're feeling like a bigger burden. You're feeling exhausted. You're feeling burnout because you are the preferred parent. And, the non-preferred parent might be feeling like sad and frustrated. And so everyone should absolutely honor their feelings and emotions and at the same time know that none of this is a personal attack or like something the toddler's doing on purpose
Yeah.
to them.
Right. So now, kind of summarizing everything that we've spoken about, but then going into the parent part of this,
Mm-hmm.
you've mentioned how first we need to, help the child feel safe. We need to feel, be calm around them, connect with them, address maybe some of the patterns that we've had. And all of this makes me think of the parents that I get a chance to speak with here at Curious Neuron, which is a parent who's often overwhelmed by balancing work or trying to, the myth of balancing work and family life. They're overwhelmed, they're stressed, they're trying to discover who they are as a parent. And so there's a lot of self-discovery and self-work, reflections. And then they're noticing patterns from their childhood and how they were raised. And there's a lot going on, especially I find if it's our first child, or even if we've had, let's say, 2 kids in about 4 years, we're still in that phase of figuring ourselves out. And I think that's an additional layer to parenting that we don't talk about enough, right? Like, that all happens at the same time. I got to know myself more by the time I had my third child, where I was like, oh, I didn't know that was a trigger. I didn't know that was something from my past that would come and just kind of show up right now when it's the wrong time because I have 3 kids under 4 years in my home and I need to be there for them and be calm. And so that's the really hard part. What sort of advice do you have for parents who listen to this and say, okay, tomorrow will be a different day. I'm going to show up for my child. But all of that stress and overwhelm and the patterns that we have, they're not going to magically disappear overnight. And that's going to be part of the process of us learning how to show up for our child. So where do we begin in that journey?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I have a lot of things to say about this. First, compassion.
Yeah.
Compassion for yourself, compassion for your child, compassion. Give yourself the benefit of the doubt. Give your child the benefit of the doubt. You guys, everyone is a human being here doing their best in that
Mm.
moment. So that is first and foremost the most important thing to remember. The second thing is have a growth mindset. So remember that you are allowed to learn and grow alongside your child. You don't have to have all the
Mm.
answers every second. And even as I, talked about before about this idea of like showing your child, modeling, calming down,
Mm-hmm.
grounding yourself. This is if you're, a perfect parent and, in need of zero growth, then you wouldn't be able to model that skill for your
Mm-hmm.
child in real time in an authentic way. Right. So it's just important to what I always say, stop looking through the rear view mirror. Don't beat yourself up. Don't look at your, like, don't live in woulda, coulda, shoulda land back
Yeah.
there.
Mm.
Look forward at the horizon through the windshield of your car, driving forward and ask yourself, okay, what did I learn? What
Yes.
support do I need?
Mm.
How can I practice this? Because each and every moment is an opportunity to practice again. You just have to accept the invitation. So focus on practice over perfection and don't try to do everything at once. Focus on one skill or one time, one moment in the day, one period of time, whether it's like breakfast time or afternoon like nap or whatever, bath time. Like focus, don't try to change everything at once.
I love
Don't
that.
try to jump from A to Z. Take the next stepping stone toward the horizon and the goal you're trying to get to. It's okay to go slow as long as you're practicing and you are, willing really just to keep practicing
Mm.
and being a human being in a relationship with your child.
Oh, I absolutely love what you just said. That is so important. And I think that as parents, we want everything to change tomorrow.
Mm.
We want quick fixes,
We
right? And
want that in every area of our lives for everything,
it's
quite
true.
frankly, you know, and like
It's
Amazon's like
not.
spoiled us
I
somehow.
know.
It's like I can get
But
this in
it's
3 hours. This is
yes.
why, like, you
It's
know,
true. But when it comes to behavior, it's not going to be like that. And I think that
no.
what you've just painted in terms of the journey, it's realistic and it's manageable and it's possible. And so I hope that parents really heard like replay that part. And I always encourage parents to listen to the podcast with a notebook, especially parents that are part of the Reflected Parent Club. You guys know that this is going to be part of what we're going to talk about this week. I always want to dig deeper, but what you just said is just so powerful. Again, because we put these unrealistic expectations on our kids, and sometimes we do it on ourselves. And we
Mhm.
expect ourselves to say, okay, I'm done yelling at my child. I won't do it tomorrow. And it's 7 a.m. and you have to get ready for work and get your child dressed, your toddler. And then you yell. And then you say, there I go again. I failed again. And I yelled at my child. What am I going to mess up in their future, right? Like a lot of parents worry they're not doing enough for their child, or the way that they're reacting to their child is going to mess something up. And it's a real worry that parents have.
Yeah, this is the pivotal moment. This is the
Yeah,
moment where we truly have the choice. We have the choice to look through the rearview
it's true.
mirror and be stuck in woulda, coulda, shoulda land. I should
Yeah.
have done this. I wish I could have done that, you know, whatever. Or to look out at the horizon toward where you want to go and be willing to practice, be willing to learn, be willing to grow.
I absolutely love that. I can't thank you enough for this conversation. I learned so much, even though my kids are out of this. I love the framework that you've given. I can't wait to share this with the Parents Insider Club. And I am so excited that parents that are listening to this podcast are going to get a piece of the knowledge that you are sharing with all of us. How can we learn more from you? And I know your book is out on October 21st. And so it'll
Mhm.
be out when parents hear this, or almost out at least. Where is it available, and how can we keep learning from you, especially from your huge online audience?
Thank you. Yes. So for the book, you can find it wherever books are sold, on Amazon, or you could get the Audible version. I
Mhm.
spent 5 days in a recording studio recording the
Oh my
Audible, learning
gosh.
a lot about myself,
Yeah.
and the way I talk and words I do not pronounce correctly, apparently. So that was a labor of love that I'm so excited for everyone to have, because being able to listen can be a game changer.
Hmm.
And also, you can just go to transformingtoddlerhood.com/book to see all of the places that you can buy it. And also, you can follow me on Instagram at Transforming Toddlerhood. And I have a lot of new and exciting things coming up for everyone this fall and in the new year. And of course, send me an email or a DM so we can connect. I'd love to.
I love that. Thanks again for chatting with me.
Thank you.